On December 5, 1945, 5 military aircraft took off from Florida on a routine training mission. 2 hours later, the lead pilot radioed. "We don't know where we are. Everything looks strange. Even the ocean doesn't look right." Then all 5 planes vanished. 14 men, 5 aircraft, gone without a trace. No wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. And they're not the only ones. This video contains 10 disappearances that defy logic. Ships found abandoned with dinners still warm on the table. People who walked into forests and were never seen again. Entire crews that vanished mid-voyage. Most people won't make it through all 10, not because it's long, but because these cases will make you question everything you think you know about disappearances. Let's start with Flight 19. Mystery number 1, Flight 19, the Bermuda Triangle. The mission, December 5, 1945, Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station, Florida. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers prepared for a routine training exercise over the Atlantic. The mission was simple: fly east, practice bombing runs, return to base. 2 hours round trip. 14 crew members boarded the planes. All were experienced. The weather was clear. Everything was routine. Flight 19 took off at 2:10 p.m. By 3:45 p.m., they should have been heading home. Instead, the base received a strange transmission. The last communication. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader, radioed, "Both my compasses are out. I'm over land, but don't know where. Everything looks strange, even the ocean." The control tower was confused. How could he be over land? The flight path was entirely over water. And how do both compasses fail simultaneously? More transmissions followed, increasingly frantic. "We can't find west. Everything looks wrong. We must have passed over Florida and are now in the Gulf of Mexico." But they hadn't. They were nowhere near the Gulf. Flight 19 was lost over the Atlantic, flying in circles, unable to determine their position despite clear skies and calm seas. The last transmission came at 4:25 p.m. "We'll fly north until we hit land or run out of fuel." Then silence. The search. Immediately, a rescue plane, a Martin Mariner with 13 crew members, took off to find them. 20 minutes later, the rescue plane also vanished. No distress signal. No wreckage. The largest air and sea search in history followed. Over 300 aircraft and ships scoured 380,000 square miles of ocean. They found nothing. No debris, no oil slicks, no bodies. 27 men and 6 aircraft gone. The mystery, the official report called it cause unknown. But how do 5 planes and a rescue aircraft vanish completely? Modern theories include magnetic anomalies, human error, or freak weather. But none explain the total absence of wreckage. Flight 19 became the most famous Bermuda Triangle case, and it's never been solved. But Flight 19 isn't the only mysterious disappearance. Sometimes entire ships vanish too. Mystery number 2, the Mary Celeste. The discovery, December 4th, 1872. The British ship Dei Gratia spotted a vessel drifting erratically in the Atlantic, about 400 miles off the Azores. As they got closer, they realized something was wrong. It was the Mary Celeste, a merchant ship that had left New York a month earlier bound for Italy. But there was no one at the helm, no one on deck. The ship was completely abandoned. The boarding party climbed aboard and found something impossible. Everything was in perfect order. The cargo was intact. Personal belongings were undisturbed. The ship's log was up to date. Dinner was still on the table, partially eaten. But the entire crew, Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 crew members had vanished. The evidence. The ship's lifeboat was missing, suggesting the crew abandoned ship deliberately. But why? The Mary Celeste was seaworthy. There was 6 months' worth of food and water. The cargo, 1,700 barrels of commercial alcohol, was mostly intact, with only 9 barrels empty. The last log entry was dated 10 days before the ship was found. It mentioned nothing unusual. No storm, no emergency, just routine navigation notes. One strange detail. A sore was found on deck with what looked like blood on it, but later determined to be rust. The ship's charts and navigation equipment were missing, and there was about 3 feet of water in the hold concerning, but not enough to sink the ship or justify abandoning it. The theories, 415 to 440 theories, have ranged from pirates to sea monsters to mutiny, but there's no evidence of violence. Nothing was stolen. The crew's personal belongings and the valuable cargo were untouched. Some suggest a seaquake or waterspout frightened them into the lifeboat. Others propose the alcohol fumes created fear of explosion. But why didn't they return when nothing happened? The most disturbing theory: something made them abandon a perfectly good ship, so quickly they left behind everything, including the captain's family. They climbed into a single lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic and were never seen again. The mystery: the Mary Celeste was found in 1872. We know the crew abandoned ship. We know they took the lifeboat. But we don't know why, and we never found them. 10 people left behind safety for certain death. What could make a captain abandon his ship, his cargo, and doom his wife and child? Sometimes ships vanish. Sometimes it's entire planes. But sometimes it's just one person in the most impossible circumstances. Mystery number 3, the vanishing of Frederick Valentik. The flight: October 21st, 1978, Melbourne, Australia. Frederick Valentik, a 20-year-old pilot, took off in a small Cessna 182 for a routine evening flight to King Island, about 130 miles away. The weather was clear. Valentik was experienced and confident. At 7:06 p.m., about 40 minutes into flight, Valentik radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control. "Is there any known traffic in my area?" The controller checked. No known traffic. What happened next has never been explained. The transmission: Valentik, "There's an aircraft about 4,000 feet above me. Can you confirm?" Controller: "No known traffic. What type of aircraft?" Valentik: "I can't tell. It's too fast. It's approaching from the east toward me. It seems to be playing some sort of game, flying at high speed. It's not an aircraft." Not an aircraft? The controller was confused. Valentik continued: "It's flying past about 1,000 feet above me. It's a long shape. I can't identify it. It's coming from me right now." Silence for a moment. Then, "It's hovering. It's not an aircraft. It has a green light and is metallic." The controller asked him to identify it. Valentik couldn't. He described it as orbiting above him, moving erratically. Then, "My engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 23 to 24, and the thing is coughing." The controller asked what his intentions were. Valentik: "My intention is to go to King Island. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." Then a strange metallic scraping sound filled the radio for 17 seconds. Then silence. Frederick Valentik was never heard from again. The search, an immediate search, began. The area where Valentik disappeared was thoroughly searched for days. No wreckage, no oil slick, no debris, no body. The Cessna 182 vanished completely. Years later, an engine cowl flap washed ashore that might have been from his plane, but it was never definitively confirmed. Theory 4, disease or famine killed them, and survivors buried the dead and moved on. Possible, but why no graves? Why no remains? The mystery: over 400 years later, we still don't know what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke. Did they join the Croton tribe and gradually assimilate? Were they killed and all evidence lost to time? Did they attempt another settlement and perish? The word Croton remains carved in history, a cryptic message from 115 people who walked away from their homes and were never definitively seen again. Somewhere in the soil of North Carolina might lie the answer, but for now, the fate of the lost colony remains one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries. Colonies disappear, ships vanish, and sometimes people walk out of their homes and are never seen again. Mystery number 7, Amy Lynn Bradley. The cruise: March 24th, 1998. The cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas was traveling through the Caribbean. Amy Lynn Bradley, a 23-year-old woman, was on vacation with her family. They'd been having a great time, swimming, dancing, enjoying the ship's amenities. Around 5:30 a.m. on March 24th, Amy's father, Ron, saw her on their balcony, talking to a member of the ship's crew. He went back to sleep. When he woke at 6 a.m., Amy was gone. Her cigarettes and lighter were still on the deck. Her shoes were still in the room. Amy Bradley had vanished from a moving cruise ship in the middle of the ocean. The ship immediately searched. Every passenger and crew member was questioned. Every inch of the ship was inspected. They checked the waters. Nothing. Amy was gone. What makes this case so disturbing is what came next. In the days and years following, there were multiple sightings or claimed sightings of Amy. 1998. A Canadian tourist reported seeing a woman matching Amy's description on a beach in Curacao begging for help. Before he could react, two men led her away. 1999. A U.S. Navy sailor claimed he saw Amy in a brothel in Curacao. She allegedly told him her name was Amy Bradley and begged him to help. He reported it to authorities, but by the time they investigated, she was gone. 2005. A woman resembling Amy was spotted by multiple witnesses in Barbados. The theory: the FBI believes Amy was a victim of human trafficking. The theory: she was targeted by crew members, possibly drugged, and taken off the ship when it docked. She was then trafficked. This theory is supported by the sightings and the fact that a band member from the ship, who Amy had been seen with the night before, failed a polygraph and had suspicious photos of Amy on his personal camera. But no definitive proof has ever been found. No body, no confirmed sighting, no arrest. The mystery: did Amy fall overboard in a tragic accident, or was she taken from the ship, trafficked, and held against her will? Her family has never given up. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on private investigators, reward offers, and awareness campaigns. Amy Lynn Bradley vanished from a cruise ship 26 years ago. If the trafficking theory is true, she could still be alive. But where and how do you vanish from a ship with thousands of witnesses? 3 mysteries left, each one stranger than the last. Mystery number 8, D.B. Cooper. The hijacking. November 24th, 1971. Portland, Oregon. A man identifying himself as Dan Cooper bought a ticket for Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 to Seattle. He was well-dressed, polite, carrying a briefcase. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant. It said, "I have a bomb." He opened his briefcase, showing her wires, red cylinders, and a battery. Then he made his demands: $200,000 in cash, for parachutes, and a fuel truck ready in Seattle. The plane circled while the FBI gathered the money. Cooper was calm, polite, even ordering a bourbon. When they landed in Seattle, the passengers were released in exchange for the money and parachutes. Cooper kept the crew. The jump. Cooper ordered the plane to fly to Mexico City at low altitude and slow speed. Somewhere over southern Washington, around 8 p.m., Cooper strapped on a parachute, tied the money to himself, opened the rear door, and jumped into the night. It was raining. The temperature was below freezing. He jumped into a heavily forested area with no lights, no landmarks, wearing a business suit. The FBI launched a massive manhunt. They searched hundreds of square miles. They found nothing. No parachute, no body, no money. D.B. Cooper vanished into the wilderness. The evidence. In 1980, a boy found $5,800 of the ransom money on a riverbank, badly deteriorated. This suggested Cooper might have landed in or near the Columbia River, but no other evidence was ever found. Despite hundreds of suspects investigated over decades, no one was ever charged. The FBI officially closed the case in 2016. Was D.B. Cooper a skilled paratrooper who survived and escaped? Or did he die in the jump, his body never recovered? The mystery. D.B. Cooper pulled off the only unsolved airplane hijacking in U.S. history. He extorted $200,000, jumped out of a plane in a storm, and was never seen again. Did he survive? Experts say the odds are low, jumping at night, in a storm over rough terrain. with a chute not designed for that type of jump. But without a body or definitive evidence, we can't be sure. D.B. Cooper became a folk hero, the man who beat the system and vanished into legend. But the truth? We may never know if he walked away or died in the trees. 2 mysteries left. These will stay with you long after the video ends. Mystery number 9, Brian Shaffer. The night, April 1st, 2006. Columbus, Ohio. Brian Shaffer, a 27-year-old medical student, went out with friends to celebrate spring break. They bar hopped around campus, eventually ending up at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar on the 2nd floor of a building. Security cameras captured Brian entering the bar at 9 p.m. He was seen inside, talking with friends, having drinks, socializing. Around 2 a.m., cameras captured him talking briefly to 2 women near the entrance. Then Brian turned around and walked back toward the bar. He was never seen again. The impossible part. Here's what makes this case impossible. The Ugly Tuna Saloona had only one public entrance and exit. Security cameras covered it completely. Every single person who entered or left was captured on camera. Police reviewed hours of footage. They saw Brian enter. They saw him inside. But they never saw him leave. Not through the front door. Not through any door. Yet, when the bar closed and police searched it top to bottom, Brian wasn't there. He hadn't passed out in a bathroom. He hadn't fallen somewhere. He simply wasn't there. Brian Shaffer walked into a bar and never walked out, despite cameras watching the only exit. The investigation. Police investigated every possibility. Could he have left through a construction exit? The bar was undergoing renovations, and there was a back area, but it led only to a locked door with an alarm. If he'd gone through, it would have triggered. It didn't. Could he have disguised himself? Unlikely. The cameras would have shown someone in different clothes or behaving strangely. They didn't. Could he have left with a crowd, hidden somehow? Investigators analyzed every person leaving on camera. None matched Brian's description. His cell phone pinged one tower briefly after 2 a.m., then went dark forever. His bank accounts were never accessed. His credit cards were never used. The mystery. Brian Shaffer entered a bar in 2006. He never left on camera, yet he vanished completely. No body has been found. No evidence of foul play. No explanation. How do you disappear from a building with one watched exit? Where did Brian go? And why have we never found a single trace of what happened? One mystery left, the most recent, and perhaps the most baffling. Mystery number 10, Lars Mittank. The Vacation, July 2014. Golden Sands, Bulgaria. Lars Mittank, a 28-year-old German man, was on vacation with friends. On their last night, Lars got into a fight with fans of a rival football team. He suffered a ruptured eardrum. His friends flew home the next day as planned. Lars stayed behind to see a doctor, who prescribed antibiotics and told him not to fly until his ear healed. Lars checked into a cheap hotel to wait. The paranoia. Over the next few days, Lars's behavior became increasingly strange. He called his mother, saying he felt scared and didn't trust the hotel staff. He claimed someone was after him, trying to hurt him. His mother, concerned, told him to go to the airport and find safety. Lars packed and took a taxi to Varna Airport. Security footage shows him arriving, looking nervous, talking to a doctor at the airport medical clinic. Then, suddenly, Lars ran. He sprinted out of the clinic, through the airport, out the doors, jumped a fence, and ran into a nearby field. He was last seen running toward a forest. That was July 8, 2014. Lars Mittank has never been seen since. The search. Massive searches followed. Police, volunteers, helicopters. They combed the area. Nothing. Lars vanished completely after running from the airport. His mother received 2 text messages from his phone days later, but they were cryptic and might not have been from him. The phone was never located. What caused Lars' sudden paranoia? Was he actually being followed, or was he experiencing a psychological break? Why did he run from the one place, an airport, where he could get help? 10 years later, there's no trace of Lars Mittank. The mystery. A young man on vacation suffered a minor injury. Days later, he became paranoid, fled an airport, ran into a forest, and vanished forever. Was he running from something real? Was he experiencing a mental health crisis? Did something happen to him in that forest? Security footage captured his last moments, running, terrified, desperate. But it doesn't tell us why, or where he went, or what happened next. 10 disappearances. 10 cases where people vanish without explanation. 5 planes and a rescue aircraft. A ship found abandoned with dinner on the table. A pilot describing a craft before disappearing. A college student who walked into farmland and was never found. 3 lighthouse keepers who left behind a cryptic log. An entire colony that carved one word and vanished. A woman who disappeared from a cruise ship. A hijacker who jumped from a plane and was never seen. A man who walked into a bar and never walked out. And a tourist who ran from an airport into oblivion. Some of these might have logical explanations we haven't found. But some defy every attempt at rational explanation. People don't just disappear, but sometimes they do. And when they do, they leave behind only questions, theories, and the haunting knowledge that it could happen to anyone. If you made it through all 10, you're part of a small group. These stories don't have endings. They have ellipses. They trail off into nothing. Subscribe for more mysteries. There are hundreds more waiting. And who knows, maybe one day we'll finally get answers. Thanks for watching. And maybe check in with someone you love tonight, just to make sure they're still there.